My daughter's dead. What else can be said? What else can be told but the story? She was a writer, an unsuccessful one, she called herself. Her agent struggled to get her work published. It was dark and morbid, and how could the general public bear the blackness that seeped from the pages? I thought she was successful, though. She was beautiful and hardworking, loving. I didn't care that her work wasn't out there. It was perfect to me. She would share so excitedly some new work, a poem or a story or a monologue. She pushed page after page into my hands, always littered with notes and lines under words in red Sharpie. Comments to herself that made me laugh or cry, little things that she told herself to do, or not to do, or to change, or to make darker, or to kill off. I should have seen it coming. When she had no paper, she would write on her arms with the red Sharpie, temporary tattoos of ideas that made sense only to her. I can only imagine what people thought walking down the street when they saw those doodles all over her right arm. She had red Sharpie words on her arm when they found her, slumped over on a bench on the edge of the lake near our home. Words that made sense only to herself. There was no note, nothing coherent, no explanation. She died in a beautiful but lonely place. I went to visit after the wake in the dusk. There was no path to it. I had to push my way through brambles and nettles. I tore my black morning dress, trod in dog shit in my high heels, and ducked under looming branches. But when I reached the clearing, I knew why she chose it. A bench overlooking the peaceful lake, trees hiding her away. It was just so quiet. I could hear every thought in my head. I could see the peaceful ripples on the water, and I felt no one else would know I was even here. The beautiful spot was only marred by rubbish. It was obviously so overgrown that the litter pickers forgot it was here, and there were cigarettes and gum wrappers, cans, all over the ground. When I looked closer, somewhat buried in the dirt, I saw her choice of death. Empty packets of pills. She must have stocked up, visiting pharmacy after pharmacy, buying 3 packets at a time, as the law allows. She must have had time to think about it, to really know what she was doing, to stop herself or to ask for help, to talk to me. But she didn't. She sat alone on the bench, dressed in her favorite outfit, the clothes that we buried her in. What was she thinking? It had to take time. It wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. She must have thought of something. Anything. She must have hesitated, or regretted it, or thought of me. Right? Pill after pill washed down with honey Jack Daniels. I didn't even know she could drink whiskey. I didn't realize how bad it all actually was. I didn't know until after she died that she drank every day, that she was drunk when she was with me, that every photo of her smiling came with a shot of vodka or whiskey or rum, or whatever she could afford. I wonder what her last thought of. I wonder what her last thought was of. Was it the pain of her liver as it reacted to the toxins that she was pouring into herself? Or the crippling tightening of her kidneys failing? Did she really feel nothing as the doctors reassured me? And did she even think of me? Her nephew, her brother, her sister-in-law, her friends, her father? Or just herself, alone in that hidden place achieving what she wanted? Did she regret it? It was a dog that found her. The path wasn't clear to humans, but an overexcited dog exploring found it very easy. She loved animals. I like to think that she wanted a dog to find her first, rather than a person. She'd just died, they said, maybe half an hour before the dog owner phoned for the ambulance. She could have been saved, even if her organs were damaged, but they were too damaged to even donate, too damaged to save someone else. We buried her at the church near our house, close enough that I could walk there every day. The funeral was packed. She was truly loved. She had close friends who sobbed openly as they stood and talked about her, laughed at the memories, cried at the fact she was gone. I didn't speak. I couldn't speak. The priest actually spoke on my behalf, and it was strange hearing my thoughts come from his mouth, coming from a man who didn't even know her. Her grave was simple. Memento mori, it said, because that's all that could be read clearly on her arm in red Sharpie at the beautiful spot. Remember, you will die. It seemed fitting, almost poetic, but the grave itself was nothing special. No angels or frills or crosses. When the funeral was over and life was supposed to go back to normal, I just couldn't settle. No one was surprised, but no one knew what to say either. What do you say to someone who just lost a child? So I visited her every day. Once a week I brought flowers. Once every other week I brought a copy of her work and read it out loud, even the notes to herself that made me chuckle. I told her how life was still going on, how her baby nephew was just starting to talk, how he could point out his auntie in photos of her. We all told him about her, I said, because she's still here with us. Every day I visited for that first year. Even when life truly went back to normal, and I eventually went back to work, I would visit. Her father visited less often. He seemed to channel his grief into working hard and getting a promotion, proving himself somehow as if it would replace his lost child. I didn't know how to talk to him about it, so I just didn't. Our marriage became a quiet habit with an empty space that was impossible to fill. But then life just continued on. My work got more intense and I needed to work more hours. My grandson had started preschool, and my daughter-in-law needed help taking him back and forth. My back, which had always been bad, was starting to get a lot worse. I could make 100 excuses as to why I didn't visit her anymore. Straight after the funeral, I promised her, I wouldn't let her grave become like some of the others, knocked over by vandals or sheer bad luck and overgrown with weeds. She just became a memory. The physical image of her grave faded away as life went on without her. It just did. It seemed impossible when you lost a child that you could continue, but you did. I remember when it happened. I was at the table with my grandson, his little legs dangling on the chair that was way too big for him. He was telling me excitedly about playing with sand at preschool, and I was nodding along because I couldn't get a word in edgewise anyway. There was a rattle at the letterbox. I thought it strange at first because it was the afternoon, and the postman had already been and gone. I dismissed it as junk mail from some takeaway place, and went back to listening to my grandson, now talking about when the teacher was telling him about shapes. I left him drawing shapes and practicing writing his name as I did some chores. I folded the clothes, wiped down the kitchen counter, and then went upstairs to put something or another away. This meant going past the front door, so I reminded myself of the junk mail that was surely there, so I could just bin it easily. I put the clothes basket at the foot of the stairs and went to the mat at the front door. It wasn't a leaflet, I realized. It looked more like a note on beige paper. Maybe it was from a neighbor. They sometimes had barbecues in the summer and were polite enough to tell us, so we wouldn't hang clothes out that would come back smelling of smoke. I bent down to pick it up and realized that the texture was strange, squishy almost, and kind of warm to the touch. My hand came away bloody, and I realized the note was covered in fine hair. It wasn't paper. It was a slip of skin, deep enough to have been cut down to the muscle, thick and heavy and warm. I think the heat was what bothered me most, with this disembodied chunk of flesh. I closed my eyes tight as the room spun, but I clutched the chunk of skin tightly regardless. Written in red Sharpie, on top of all the fine hair that dusted her arms, were the words, "You never visit me anymore."